Welcome to News with a View. Today, April 2nd, 2026. Lots of breaking news going on today. Lots of things going on. I apologize for not being doing a show the last few days. Just was not feeling up to it, folks. And there was plenty of news, and I'll cover a lot of the stuff that's going on, but sometimes you just got to step back, and I had to step back. This is going out live right now and being recorded on YouTube, as it is being recorded on my equipment here for publication in a few hours. Some editing that I always do. Anyone new to this show, welcome. Subscribers, thank you. If you like this, please, if you're just viewing it and you're seeing it on YouTube, leave comments, like, subscribe. I need subscribers. It's always a good thing to have. Comments, too. I don't mind comments. I answer every one of them, except Bob in New York. This is a conservative show. I will lean towards a conservative viewpoint, but only if it follows our laws and constitutions, and it makes sense. If you're trying to enact a new law, it won't be here, of course. But if it makes sense, I'll say why I think it makes sense. But I'll also say when I think it doesn't make sense, or I think that, hey, no, this little book stops you from doing that. And I've said it before. I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. I'm a Federalist. The great thing about being a Federalist, our Democrats can be Federalists too. So, in today's show, which I think will be episode 44. I'll be talking about Pam Bondi, of course. She is leaving as Attorney General over the next month. Of course, comments made by the President today over the Iran war. I'll also be speaking in, not detail, but a lot about President Trump's latest executive order about mail-in ballots. There's also going to be, I'll be talking about the Supreme Court ruling on a Colorado issue on free speech. And also a lot of chit-chat about birthrights. I'll be talking about that. I'll be speaking about a Democrat who was at a church meeting of about 100 people, mostly blacks, and he asked a very pointed question and got a very surprising answer. And then I'll be dragging Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island. I'll be kicking him around a bit, as I have been. If you've watched my shows in the past, he's what I call a knucklehead clown and just a true embarrassment to his party. All right, let's get going. Pam Bondi. I saw things, she was fired, and then no, she's staying on to transition Todd Blanche, who is right now the second in charge, the Deputy Attorney General, and he'll take over as acting Attorney General. And we'll see how that works out. I do not think that he will be a permanent replacement. I think that he'll stay number two. but you never know. I mean, there's a lot of names flying around out there. But the main thing I've seen so far, and I mean, of course, this is just happening, that Pam Bondi had left a very nice, I'm leaving, I'm going on to private, that, I love everything that President Trump has done. This administration has accomplished a lot in curbing crime, arresting cartel members, arresting terrorists, trying people, going after fraud. I think that this administration has been tough with criminals. And I think that Pam Bondi steered the Department of Justice. She was good. She was good. I'm sure she had disagreements with the president, where I know where you want to go with this, but, Mr. President, I think we're really going to hit a wall here, but, we can try. We can try. But I think that she's leaving under very good terms. She's done a great job. Todd Blanche comes in with lots of experience, and not only experience, but on-the-job experience now. So I don't think there'll be too much of a change of direction. The one thing that, you could say about everyone in the Trump administration, where Trump will take loyalty and let you learn on the job. So in that sense, I think that Pam Bondi was a great choice. She's extremely loyal, still is. I don't think she'll have a job inside the administration, but you never know. You just don't know where these things go. But she'll be working, and as she said, supporting the president and giving him as much time as she can give the president. So I think she's done a great job. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of, Democrats running around going, we're not going to accept anyone else. We're not going to do this. We're not, and the same things that the Republicans did when they had to pick, or approve a Democrat for Attorney General. That's politics. I think she did a great job. I can't say it enough. I think she was very good at the job. I think she faced a lot of hurdles in her time as Attorney General. A lot of Democrats didn't like her, but she was a very competent, Attorney General. Of course, she doesn't try cases. Department of Justice, the lawyers down below in the trenches, they're the ones that fight the cases. She will, she's the one that looks and goes, yeah, you go after this person. No, don't go after that person. There's not enough. Or you brought it here, I don't know if we can reach, to charge that individual. So I think that I would have liked her to stay on, just to go after the fraud that is being discovered in a lot of federal programs. And I've said this before, it's just not blue states. Lots of fraud in blue states. And I'm sure there's lots of frauds in red states when you start looking. I'm not one of these, all these blue states. No. When it comes to fraud, it doesn't know blue or red. It just knows green. And that's the way that goes. So All right, that's been 10 minutes basically on Pam Bondi. The president gave a speech today and addressed the nation basically on the Iranian war, how he says, we're accomplishing all our goals, and that in the next few weeks it will be winding down. I think that there's a lot more going on that is not being reported. The press jumps all over anytime Iran shoots a missile, and they had plenty of them because all the prior administrations allowed them to build up such a huge amount of weaponry, and those were Republican administrations too. So it just wasn't, Democrats. Biden was useless, his administration. Obama was more of appeasement, and even Trump first administration, but again, Trump was fighting for his political future. The Democrats were just pounding away. They never let him do anything. They were, with all their lies. And really, this second term of Trump is really where we should have been 6 years ago. Anytime Iran shoots a missile, they look at it and say the failure of America, the failure of the war. No, these guys had a lot of missiles, a lot of ballistic missiles. They had a lot of drones. They're getting a lot of stuff in, even from China and North Korea. They had stockpiles. But what you need to do is crush the command and control. And you start wiping out key leadership, they don't know where to shoot them, and the people that do, they're trying to figure it all out. And, yesterday, I think the Iran shot the most amount of ballistic missiles at, Israel. Yeah, well, they were all intercepted or they fell harmlessly elsewhere. But, if the liberal, socialist, progressive media can make a plug for Iran, they'll do it every time. It's pitiful. And do not for a moment think that won't be remembered in ads coming up and or all the talk and the Democrats are doing as much harm internally than the GOP could have ever dreamed of. The shutdown has blown up in their face. They've accomplished nothing except made a lot of people very unhappy and accomplished nothing. You have Schumer the clown. Again, I have said on this program that I liked Schumer. Schumer was a deal maker. He knew how to walk down the aisle and get votes and what it took. And then he went to the dark side. He started on a lot of these progressive things, because that's, he was riding the coattails on it. And it's been disastrous. Disastrous for Schumer, disastrous for the Democratic Party. They're just not going to be able to break that stigma that the American voters are going to have. If you thought the American voters crossed over the line in November 2024, you ain't seen nothing yet. There are a lot of people that are now questioning these Democrats that are now running again and putting their feet to the fire. How could you do this? What was your reasoning behind it? And, you can hate Trump, that's fine, but why did you throw us in the front? Why'd you do that? You thought you could win? You thought you could use us as pawns? And it backfired. It backfired. The Iranian war, they go, well, a lot of Americans are dissatisfied with it. Yeah, well, sure, I'm sure a lot of Americans are dissatisfied with it and not happy about it and had no idea why we were even doing it, And, you have all these liberal, socialist, communist groups out there going, poor Iran, poor Iran. And yet, they've killed, murdered hundreds of thousands of their own people, murdered millions of Muslims across the world, killed Americans, killed Europeans all around the world through proxy terrorist groups. No, this was coming due to Iran. Iran is getting paid back. And can you imagine Iran with the threat of a nuclear weapon where they even sat at the negotiating tables? And that's what triggered everything. Hey, we have enough to build 10 bombs if we wanted to. Now, later on they said, no, we were just telling you that we could do it. We haven't. But we could. Just that threat. That's like going and putting your hand in your coat and you pointing your finger out and going, I got a gun. And then you're shocked when the other guy takes out his gun and shoots you. And you go, well, no, it wasn't a gun. I was just saying. No. You make a threat and you're the enemy, I'm going to believe that you will carry out your threat, that you are capable of carrying out that threat. And if I can stop you from carrying out that threat and you are the enemy, I'm going to smash you bad. And that's exactly what happened. Iran misplayed their hand. You had the cowardice of England, and it's unbelievable. We didn't start this. We didn't do it. Don't hurt me, please. And in the meantime, they go, well, we could strike England if we wanted to. And they go, well, that's why we're not fighting you. I can understand, but England has North Sea oil. We have oil. Now, Europe doesn't, for the most part. And, they were dependent on those shipments coming out of the Middle East. And it is not that the Middle Eastern states are going, we're going to boycott Europe. There's no oil. No, they just don't have a means to get it there. And there were many times where they tried to have pipelines, and because countries were fighting it, and, we didn't want Russia to have any control of it. We didn't want China to have any control of it. We didn't want anyone else having any control of it. Well, a lot of missteps there. A lot of missteps there. And so you have these countries now that are going to have to be dependent on Russia. And the big winner, and I said from day one of this, was going to be Russia. Because if they were to blow up facilities in the Middle East, oil producing facilities, well, that only leaves a few people, South America, Africa, and Russia, and the United States, of course, being a leading exporter. But again, our oil would go up because that's the way it works. It's supply and demand. If Iran were to be able to come back into the fold of nations and they can start putting their oil out there. I mean, Libya still is not producing oil like it did. So that could be the same thing that happens to Iran if we blow up all their facilities. No one wants to go in there and invest billions and billions and billions into the infrastructure if all they're going to do again is be a problem and you lost your infrastructure investment. So, and we've been trying to stay away from it, but there'll come a point, on the 58th day of the president's war power authority that he'll go in there and go, hey, you were hoping that the clock would run out. Well, guess what? Now you don't even have a clock. Good luck to you. All right, so that's what, I know there was a lot of Democrats and an uproar over everything he says, but there's an uproar on everything that Donald Trump says. Okay, let's get to the Supreme Court. A very good ruling this week in the Supreme Court against the state of Colorado, who said conversion therapy was illegal. You could not do that. And the Supreme Court, in a 9-0, this is how wrong these people are getting it. In a 9-0 opinion and ruling, they said, yeah, Colorado, you can't do that. That's free speech. You're stopping free speech. So who are the people that are against democracy and stopping people from talking and speaking and saying things? Well, it's not the Trump administration. It's blue states. So, and this was about trans conversion therapy. Where you could have to go to a counselor and speak to someone and go, hey, listen, this is irreversible. Once you go down this path, you gotta be, you gotta know what you're doing. They need a lot of time to speak to these people, and people that send their children, this is mainly children here, to doctors to go talk them out of this, show them, they're wrong with it all. They wanted to stop that. That's what Colorado and California and these other states, and this is going to have a big impact all the way down the line. You can't do that. And I think the Supreme Court should also step in, and it should be where parental right issues. Where does a school take over the parental rights? And I'm not talking about the academic side of that. I'm talking about the mental health side of that. If you're in a school district that says, hey, we can bring men dressed as women and women dressed up as men and talk to your children in school, you have a PTA, you have everything you could do. You could pull your child out of that school. A lot of places say, I don't want my child attending that. Give them a study hall, you can put them in a resource room or whatever, but, I don't want them attending that. But where schools say, no, they are forced to learn this. No, they should not be. And there are certain, the old stating, the 3 R's, and, there are certain things we should be educating our children at school with, and then everything else stays in the house. You want them to be religious, they're allowed to be religious. They can't bring that into school with them, but they can have their values, and their values on a religious basis, respected. I think if you went to a school that was predominantly Muslim, and there are plenty of schools that way, and demanded that a gay go in there or a trans go in there to talk about their lifestyle, that wouldn't happen. But for other people, you're religious, they won't even take that into account. So I'd like to see the Supreme Court get challenged with that. And the Supreme Court doesn't make laws, folks. I know that. I could hear Bob in New York screaming. No. I get that. Someone has to challenge it and go, it's unconstitutional. It's, boom, boom, and you can't do that. You want to send your kids to a yeshiva, send them to a yeshiva. You want to send them to Christian school, send them to Christian school. You want to send them to Catholic school, send them to Catholic school. That's great. You want to send them to an all-Muslim school? You can do that. That's fine. That's fine. So that was a big, big win. And it should never even, it was such a waste of time. 9-0, you stood no chance. You stood no chance when you did it, and you knew it, and you were forcing it down people's throats. Democracy in action, right? Well, we don't have, number one, we don't have a democracy. We're a republic. A democracy is mob rule. We don't have that. The other big item, and I'll get into that too, is the president's latest executive order on mail-in ballots, and that, Mr. President, I don't know if you could do that. I think that Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the Constitution really limits you from doing that. And the only people that can do that, and really what it states is basically that the times, place, and manner of the elections for representatives and senators and representatives is a state issue, and that they can set the agenda on how that's done, except for the choosing. There's some choice words, and the date for a federal election is set by, the federal government. I think that's Congress that does that. But Congress can also step in and go, we're going to make this a law. You look at where this all intercedes. It's the 15th Amendment gets involved with this, and language from 1870, which is still current and still there. It's got to be followed. And then, of course, all the little add-ons and laws set by Congress. The Voting Rights Act and, some of it, and which are fine. But I still think that the real key to states going, you can't do that, Mr. President, is the manner, the term manner. Now, if a state wants paper ballots, they can have paper ballots. If the states want automatic, they could do that. If they want to do mail-in ballots, they could do it. Where the president really was going after are the states that do, everyone gets a mail-in ballot if they choose to do it. And they don't make the request. They just, everyone on the list, we send it out, which is ripe for harvesting, ballot harvesting. And we've seen that. And they go, well, no, the amount of fraud is 0.000043. And yet, you do see more and more cases of fraud happening. And if you're seeing 1%, it's 10%. If you're seeing 10%, it's 30%. Yeah, because you just can't capture it. And a lot of where President Trump was arguing for, he was restricted. You can't get that data. You can't see how people voted. What makes our elections really great. And I agree with that. But there has to be some really great mechanisms in place. And we've seen that has not been the case. People have been allowed to vote that should not have been allowed to vote. And you know darn well, if they catch it there, it's happening there and there and there and there. And it really needs to be looked at. And voter ID, right? People are just so, I take that back. Democrat elected officials are so against voter ID. And there was a Democrat out of Alabama, Shamari Coleman Figures. He's a representative out of Alabama, who attended a meeting at a predominantly black church. And there were about 100 people there. And he got up there and he goes, how many of you don't have IDs? Because with voter ID, if you don't have ID, you will not be able to vote. I want to see a show of hands of everyone that has no ID. Not one person raised their hand. Everyone had it. And, he was humming, and goes, well, this is great that you have your ID and you can vote. But there's a lot of people that aren't here tonight that can't, because... No. Out of that 100, if 8 had risen their hand, I'd question why. Well, why didn't they have it? And is it because they're being restricted on getting it? And then that's a valid question. 8 out of 100 is, 8%. That's a huge figure. And if you would apply that nationwide, that can tip scales. I get that. But here, there's over 70% of the Democrats and about 92% of the Republicans voters out there who said, no, we need a voter ID law. And the Democrats just refuse. And this is going to play harder and harder against everything the Democrats are doing that is against the will of the American people. Now, of course, And again, this is why you don't have a democracy, and we have a republic where, elected official goes, yeah, I live in a state where, everyone would be happy bringing slavery back, but that's not going to happen. So, that's why you have a republic, where if you had a democracy, all you needed was, 50% plus one vote. And that would be the law of the land. So it's important to understand what's going on around you. It's important for you to know what's going around. So this representative went out and he tested the water. And yeah, he put more than his big toe in the water. He dove in. And he found out real quick, at least where he was at. And I'm sure he picked the poorest area that he represents to ask that question. The furthest out of town, the furthest from wherever. So the Democrats are on the losing end of voter ID. But I think the president can't have what he wants enforced. It is a states' rights issue. And the only time that that can change is if the House of Representatives steps in and makes laws contrary to that. And I don't like mail-in ballots. I think mail-in ballots are a bad thing. Service people, of course, that goes without saying. Let's not be stupid about this. People in nursing homes, you're sick. But everyone else, you're expected to show up and vote. And that's why for years, voting was, you got that day off from work. You got that day off, whether you voted or not, but you had that day off. So you couldn't say, hey, I was working that day, I couldn't get there, I couldn't do it. No. And of course, you have to remember that back in the day, you might have had to travel 20 miles by horse to go vote. So it was actually mail-in ballots became a thing during the Civil War. So that's when that started happening. That's how far it goes back, and that's how far back you can go and say, got a lot of history with it. The other thing on the agenda for the Supreme Court, and they started discussing it in earnest, was the birth rights. And I honestly think that President Trump is going to win this. It might be 5-4. It might be 6-3. But there's enough history in what was the intent of the 14th Amendment in there. And yes, I think courts had gotten it wrong before. And using the laws that were back then where we didn't have a super enforced immigration where, you made your home here, you were a citizen. It was, your domicile was your right. And then much later on in the late 1800s, early 1900s, then of course in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, it started getting more tighter. But really, it wasn't being controlled. Our southern borders weren't really being controlled Because there was an economic incentive not to. The farmers, got cheap labor when they needed it and got rid of them when they didn't need it. So, the Republicans looked the other way, the Democrats looked the other way, and then when we started getting tighter with it, then they started looking at it as votes. Hey, we're not getting the black vote anymore. Because as they started going up the social scale, they started seeing, hey, you know what? White or black, that don't matter. It's that color green that matters. And they started seeing things and experiencing it. And you still have, a government that keeps people fat, dumb, and happy. And what do you think they want all these drug laws, where we want to have medical cocaine now? Because you keep your people drunk, or you keep your people, high on drugs. Yeah, they're much easier to control. And then you feed them, and then you house them, and then you clothe them. And, cradle to grave, I got them from the time they're babies, up until they're voting, up until they die. Well, that's money in the bank. So, but that's changing. So what did they want to do? They wanted these illegals to come here and stay. And they hid them in plain sight. That's what they did. And that's why we have to go out and now ask people, hey, are you? Because there was no system of corralling these people. Now, people that came in through the immigration system put their names on a list and they go, yeah, we're going to give you temporary status. No, we're going to do this. No, we're going to do that. Those people are on a list. We know who they are. We might not know where they, we know who they are. We don't know where they are. And of course, the people that are filing for, permanent residence and stuff, they're fine. No one's touching those people. We're touching people that are criminals, that have not shown up for their hearings and followed the system. The people that just came across the border that we have no idea. I don't have you on any list. And there's 1.6 million of those people who are on an automatic, you capture them, you deport them. Biden never did it. Well, he did it, but it was very limited. He was, an Obama catch and release. So you'd catch these people and they'd be put on a list, but they came over, we captured them in, 50 miles in, or 100, 200 miles, and we have all right, you got to show up here on this date, and at that hearing they could have said, no, you can't, right back you go. So they never showed up, so we don't know who these people are or where they are, so they're hiding in plain sight. And this is why you had to have ICE go around and, they go, well, the violence of confrontations with ICE has never happened like this before. Yeah, because they never, ICE didn't go out like they did. Under Obama, he got rid of a lot of people. Well, actually, I think it was Bill Clinton, but a lot of them didn't. And Bush didn't, and Reagan didn't. Listen, there's a lot of administrations that just sat back and did nothing about it. And there were people that looked at it, hey, they're lying to their employer who's taking out Social Security and matching it and sending it in to people that will never collect it because they can't ever prove who they are. or how they got here. I mean, you don't think that doesn't happen? So, the idea of the president trying to clamp down on voting and having a voting ID system in place it just makes sense. I don't think there's a country around that doesn't have a voter ID system. So the only people that want to have no ID is people who are gaming the system. Sorry. It doesn't hurt anyone. Doesn't hurt anyone. So I think between Voting Right Act and the SAVE Act, the birthright, these are game changers. Absolute game changers. And I think it's for the better. And I know what people are saying. They say, well, Mexico doesn't recognize a child born outside of Mexico to Mexican citizens as being citizens. Not my problem. Not my problem. And the difference of coming here and where I say the sovereignty and then jurisdiction of is that when you came in through immigration, you said why you were coming here. And the ones that got temporary, that can go away. The people that asked for immigration gave a testimony that they're going to renounce their citizenship from wherever who has jurisdiction and sovereignty over them. If you come to the United States and never, ever make mention to the immigration officials of who you are, you can't make that declaration. And just having your big toe here doesn't give you the declaration. And getting caught and go, I don't want to go back. I want to live in America. I renounce my citizenship. No problem. You got to do it from your country. And people saying, well, these people now are stateless. Again, we didn't create the problem. They created that problem. And who's to blame for that for the most part in the last 30 years? Democrats. Democrats. Sorry, Democrats. All right. My favorite senator, other than Schumer, to pick on, is Sheldon Whitehouse out of Rhode Island. This guy, I don't know how he got to where he got. The things that come out of this guy's mouth, I'd be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed. Now he's going after, he's big on his committee, and he's always taking shots at Patel. And Patel has been landing blows against him, and he goes, laugh right now, guy. I got all the goods on what's going on in your state. I have all the goods on what you're doing. And Democrats are running, scared. They're scared because I don't like the government being weaponized by any party. That's not what the government's there do. But if they were doing something illegal, then they should have to answer for it. But if you're going to use that just as, hey, I got it right here, and if you step out of line, you know, maybe Fox will get this, or maybe even MSNBC will get this. You can't do that. Personally, I won't stand for that. Because if you know they did criminal activity or did something illegal or whatever, and you know it, and you are a position of power to do something about it, and don't, you're just as guilty. Just as guilty. So if you're going to make that threat and there isn't anything there, you got to go. I don't want you there doing that. We didn't stand for it when they did it to Trump. I will not stand for it to being done to anyone. Laws and the Constitution. It's all we got, folks. That's it. And when you start taking those things for liberty, and you start taking it as a weapon, we got a problem. We have a problem. But Sheldon Whitehouse says, if you go back and listen to him talk, you'd go, how did he get to where he got? The guy's, his logic is like that of a 14-year-old. So, he gets the Clown of the Week award from me. Schumer has that forever, but for the week, I'll give it to. I'll give the Clown of the Week to Sheldon Whitehouse, a senator from Rhode Island. All right, I've been talking for 52 minutes. This will be going out shortly, and again, if you made it this far, please leave comments, subscribe, like. I will be now in the next week or so putting a lot of my material and shows out on Rumble.com. And that works a little differently. I'll be taking my Raw show and editing it for Rumble. But I like to get more eyeballs out there watching it and agreeing with me, disagree, give me your opinion on things. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Just keep it civil. I try to keep it civil, except with Bob out of New York. I can't be civil. Can't be civil with him. No, we're very civil to one another. All right, everyone, be safe, be well. As I always say, if you can give it to a charity, please give to a charity. Just make sure it's a valid charity. Don't become a victim trying to help victims. It doesn't help anyone except that organization. If you don't feel like doing that, I can understand that. Please think about giving to a food bank. They're always looking for food. They're always looking for a monetary contribution so they can address a situation that is facing them at that moment. It helps in 98% of the cases locally. And you do that without any, I don't care why they're in the position they're in. I don't care if it's their own fault. I don't care if it's that. I think of children who have no control over that. So we try to give, and we do. And I know Bob in New York does that too. So he gives. He's a good guy. All right. Say a prayer. Prayer does work, no matter what a Democrat might tell you otherwise. And with that, everyone be safe, be well, and I'll be fading to black. I will be having a show tomorrow.